What do we need to do to prepare our crawl space for the winter? We'll talk about that. Plus, renovations to avoid around the kitchen. We're going to continue our discussion on renovation ripoffs, as they say at Realtor.com. Plus, coming up on our news desk, we're going to talk a little bit about the real estate market and what to expect in the forecast coming up in the new year. That's all coming up. That plus more on the Home Pros Radio Show.
The Home Pros Radio Show. Brought to you by Prime Lending. Home loans made simple. Welcome to the Home Pros Radio Show, the premier resource for the well-informed homeowner. With over 30 years of combined home inspection and renovation experience, your hosts, Tommy Donovan and Shane Hips, help you stay on top of your home improvement and home maintenance needs. Visit homeprosradio.com to access the trusted product and service providers that are a part of our Home Pros network. Find the Home Pros Radio Show on Facebook and Twitter for regular show updates and additional information on the topics covered on our show. To join the conversation, call 248-HOME-PROS. And now, your Home Pros, Tommy Donovan and Shane Hips.
All right, and welcome to the Home Pros Radio Show. I'm Tommy Donovan with RIC Home Inspections.
And I'm Shane Hips with Closing Contractor.
Thanks for joining us this week. We're working our way through the month of December, and we're talking about we were talking a lot recently about the real estate market, the housing market, and things like that. We got some interesting updates from both Realtor.com and the National Association of Home Builders to share, maybe some forecasting that might help us out, real estate professionals out there. You can prepare for the new year. Renovations. You're in a situation like this, you go less toward real estate stuff, but more to renovation stuff.
Yes, generally we do.
Business.
Right now, the renovations have slowed down a little bit right now, but that's probably the holidays and all that fun stuff. But then we've had a few big punch list type things.
Okay.
And actually, we've had two from trusts come in recently. So, and
like homes that are
where the deceased.
Okay.
So the homes are in a
estates.
trust, they're estates, where the owner, the primary owner is deceased, and now they're getting it ready to sell it.
Okay.
And those are usually pretty large punch lists, because a lot of times it maybe was older people that were living in the house, and they either didn't
maintain it, or couldn't maintain it, or didn't,
or whatever. And sometimes it may be really dated, and they're like thinking, okay, I want to get whatever I can for the trust out of it. And you have different situations there. And of course, you always get, a lot of times with the older people, you get the well, it works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The
true.
things were fixed in whatever
Well, it was
way.
okay when we built the house.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, we still trucking along. We're still getting calls on renovations, but they've slowed down just a tad. I mean, they haven't stopped, but then we've gotten several larger punch lists in, which is keeps us going. And I've been in two recently where the crawl space wasn't taken care of, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that. One of them all, the subfloor is damaged.
Wow.
So you get into those, you got to take that whole house apart pretty much. You got all flooring, everything has to come up from the inside. And if all the subfloor is damaged, you could imagine how many joists and seals and girders and all this is damaged as well. Just from water getting in there through the years and them just not knowing until things start sinking. Like we went to one. We literally were called to go out there to renovate the two bathrooms. They wanted to make one of the bathrooms a little larger. We get in there and start looking, and then look underneath, and it's like, ooh, there's a lot more that has to be done prior to renovating these bathrooms. And honestly, the leaks from the bathrooms were contributors to all these problems, on top of grading and everything else. But yeah, and you get into that, and it's like, okay, which one do I take care of first? Because that's what they're thinking. Do we take care of the leaks first, or I was like, well, all of this floor is going to have to be replaced. Ideally, it needs to be done at the same time anyway.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those, you try to figure out the best order to do it, but in that situation, there's not a whole lot of good options. Best thing to do is tear the whole house apart and rebuild it all back together.
Yeah.
That's the cheapest option. Although it's all up front, it's going to be the cheapest option rather than trying to do it over here, then go over here, because you're going to constantly be working back and forth. Your flooring can't be the same if you don't do it all at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
It's, it makes it
What
challenging.
caused all the floor and everything to deteriorate? Was it bad crawl space conditions?
High
or
moisture.
Just
High moisture. It was a combination of plumbing leaks and standing water in the crawl space from poor drainage, poor grading. It's one of those that's been going on for years, and no one ever saw it. And then there was another one that the one that wasn't every bit of it came from a plumbing leak. It was a pipe busted somewhere, or it could have been a slower leak or something, because it had to be going on for a while.
Yeah.
Anytime you see something and the wood is rotted and all that, that means it's been going on for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like
that bad.
Yeah, it's not like it just a pipe busted and all of a sudden everything's rotten. That's not how it works.
It takes time for all that to happen. Well, that kind of leads us into our question of the week.
Excuse me. I'd like to ask you a few questions.
We have a question from Gary in Traveler's Rest. His question was, now that the weather is getting colder, do I need to close my foundation vents to keep my pipes from freezing? He's worrying about the conditions in his crawl space in the winter months, which is a good idea. Now, he's in Traveler's Rest. That's just north of the Greenville, South Carolina area where we are. It's something that I hear a lot from folks who are moving down here from the north.
Right.
What should I do should I close my crawl space vents in the winter? And there are some climates where that's a good idea. It's not as critical, I would say, down here where we are.
It's not as critical as it is up north. But it's one of those. I still recommend it, although you're not gonna get that ventilation while that's going on.
But the good thing is ventilation is not as critical in the winter,
right?
Around here, at least, because humidity isn't as high,
right?
So that's okay.
And your heat is running, which dries the air out, as opposed to in the winter when your AC is running and all that condensation ends up under your house. So, I mean, I would recommend closing them. And let's be honest, Traveler's Rest is not far from here at all. Yeah. But it gets colder in Traveler's Rest.
It does.
I mean, I remember when I was in school, like high school and whatnot, we used to always say it's snowing in Traveler's Rest.
Yeah.
Anytime there was any chance of snow.
Yeah.
Because we were at the far south end of the county there, but if any of the schools were canceled, all of them in Greenville County were canceled.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as soon as the slightest chance of snow, that people would be like, it's snowing in Traveler's Rest. And everybody get excited thinking our school's about to get shut down. We're about to go home. So, although it's not far, but it does get colder in Traveler's Rest than it does here. So, I mean, if you get and a lot of it's in the mountains. Maybe there's a breeze, but you don't want that breeze blowing through those foundation vents and freezing.
I know I've had there was one time when our crawl space door fell. It came off of its hinges, and our water main was right there near the crawl space door, which is nice and convenient.
Right.
But when it's cold outside and that crawl space door falls and you got this cold air blowing in, it froze the water in our water main. And we woke up one morning, we were like,
where's the water?
Yeah. And it was really interesting.
Yeah.
I guess we're lucky that it didn't
bust
burst the pipes because we have a copper water main. But yeah, it's one of those things where you got to take in all the factors.
Yeah.
Usually they'll say you have to have temperatures below freezing for several days for it to be bad enough where it's gonna really destroy your plumbing under the house. But yeah, it's something to consider. It doesn't hurt. Here's the thing that I would say is, it's probably more critical in the summer to have your crawl space vents open.
I would absolutely
than it is to have
agree
them
with that.
in our area, at least, than to have them closed in the winter. So Sure, go ahead and close them in the winter.
But remember,
do not
I'm with you
forget
there. I'm with you there. Yeah.
to open them up in the summer, because once that humid air comes in for the summer months, it can create some major issues.
Yep.
Which leads me to an example where I was doing a house a couple weeks ago or a couple days ago, and it was on Monday, and I noticed that there are trash bags, that, like just literal like kitchen trash bags that were. It was almost as if somebody had pulled out the foundation vents, put it in a trash bag, and then pushed the foundation vent back in. Mm-hmm. So I was asking the homeowner who was selling the house, I was like, this was a rental house. I was like, what's the deal? And he had a tenant who felt like that the vents needed to be closed up, needed to be sealed.
Right.
And it caused major issues under the house.
Yeah, around here, and I can only speak for around here, I don't think there's enough need to close the vents to put a trash bag on it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Unless you know it's going to be, like you say, below freezing for a week straight or something. Okay, it might be time to, go to that extreme. But I don't think it ever gets bad enough around here, cold enough to need to put a trash bag in place of the vent.
Gotcha. So if you want to close them for the winter months, it's not a bad thing. Like with the way our water main was when our crawl space door fell off. Our house is up on a hill, so we had a breeze.
That breeze
coming up.
right
It was
in.
just the conditions were perfect. But that doesn't happen when we have our door closed.
When things are
closed. So it's one of those things.
But
if you're going to close them, I'm trying to not say it. So close the vents. If you do close them, remember, do not forget to open them up in the spring. Yeah. So we're talking about renovations in kitchen, bathroom, redoing a bathroom. That leads me to this photo.
The photo from the field.
What are you looking at? I know what I'm doing.
Did you see that?
I know the recent house I was in, I took this picture, thought it would be helpful to give folks a visual. If you have an older plumbing system and you're noticing your drains are getting slow, here's a good reason why.
Yeah.
This was a house where they had actually removed some of the old drain lines, and they put in new drain lines and just left the old ones just sitting there. They cut some of them out and then left the old ones. Removed part of them, left some of the old just hanging there.
Right.
And there's a good cross section of what happens to an old galvanized drain line as
it fills in.
Yeah. Ugh, isn't that disgusting?
Yes, it is.
So, it also hopefully will help people realize, be conscious of what you pour down your sink.
Right. And honestly, I don't see them like this. Well, I'm not in cutting out galvanized pipe all the time.
Yeah.
But usually, in my experience, they get bottom rotted before they do this. I mean, where the bottom is leaking out and all. But those galvanized lines. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. There's no doubt. But that if they don't bottom rot, that is what ends up happening on the inside. So yes.
So that was a kitchen. That was a kitchen drain line. So I'm thinking about all the grease that was poured down the sink over the years and things like that. Do you have a question?
Yeah, does that happen with other lines that aren't made out of cast
Plastic?
iron?
Like PVC?
And the black
PVC
stuff?
drain lines?
It can still happen, yeah. Depending on what you put in it. But I mean, some of this could be rust and everything else. So I mean, you're not gonna have as much of that or anything. But but the line can still be clogged.
The thing about the galvanized lines is they can become corroded, and then that just builds up. That's why we don't use them anymore.
And it's also easier for stuff to stick to it. The PVC's slicker.
Yeah.
So stuff's easily, but it can still happen. I mean, that's why people tell you not to put all your table scraps and all into disposal. Dump them off in the trash can first, then put, the disposal's not designed to chop up everything that you don't ever use. It's designed to, get rid of the stuff that's left on the plate after it's all done or whatever. Speaking of disposals.
It's not a food processor.
Mine made an awful noise the other day.
Yeah?
It's like, I was like, Charlie doesn't put a fork in the disposal or something. I was like, this is awful. This is so loud. I turned it off, put my hand down in there, see what utensil did she put in there? And apparently she had eaten some popcorn and it was popcorn kernels.
Oh.
But that thing was making the worst noise. I was like, what in the world is in this
I think
thing?
it's funny how I'll in new construction, I'll turn on the garbage disposal to test it, and it'll make just this god awful noise. And I'm like, who threw nuts and bolts and then the sink? And I'm surprised at how a piece of plastic or something in there.
Yeah.
It seems harmless. Can really sound like you're.
Yeah, these things aren't designed to chop up whatever you want to.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was like, Charlie, come here.
What were you doing?
I said, do not put popcorn. But honestly,
But
I would have
popcorn
never
kernels,
thought.
yeah.
I would have never thought anything of it. So I felt bad later for saying Charlie, making a big deal out of it. But it was popcorn kernels. If you put them in if y'all want to do an experiment, put popcorn kernels in your garbage disposal and see how much noise it makes. It sounded awful.
Wow.
I was like, and it was only like one or two. It didn't like it was a bunch.
Yeah.
I mean, she had dumped the bag of popcorn in a
And it
bowl.
sounded like-
and then she was done, threw it in the sink.
It sounded like nuts and bolts down there,
It
didn't
sounded awful. I'm like, what in the world? I was like, I'm never going to get these popcorn kernels out of here. But so I dug out what I could, but then it was still making noise. So I just ran it for a minute. After about a minute, it finally chopped up the popcorn kernels to the point where it wasn't making all the noise.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing too. That's not something you can go in there and fish them out.
Yeah, it's hard to. Yeah, it's harder to get a hold of separate popcorn kernels. You can't really. But yeah.
Well, luckily, it was just something simple like that.
Yes.
You do wonder. You hear something like that in your sink, and you're like, "Uh-oh, what do I have to? I have to rip everything out."
Do I have to buy all new silverware? Because she dumped all the forks in there.
Pull this fork out.
The forks
time. Yeah. Well, Well, if you're thinking about a kitchen renovation, we're going to go over some things that Realtor.com says you want to avoid. A lot of us are spending more time, just like we were talking about with Shane and Closing Contractor, helping homeowners renovate their homes instead of buying new homes. A lot of renovations going on. What to do in your house to avoid spending too much money on a renovation. So when we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about that on the Home Pros Radio Show.
If you're a home service provider who takes pride in your work and strives to be recognized as a trustworthy professional in your industry, the Home Pros Radio Show wants to hear from you.
Become a Home Pros Radio Show partner. Send us an email at ask@homeprosradio.com.
Your Home Pros Radio Show Expo listing and your featured appearances on our podcast are just the beginning when it comes to the ways that we can help brand your business on the Home Pros Radio Show.
It's a great opportunity. It's just an email away. Ask@homeprosradio.com.
And welcome back to the Home Pros Radio Show. I'm Tommy Donovan with RIC Home Inspections.
And I'm Shane Hips with Closing Contractor.
And we're talking renovations in this segment of the Home Pros
And I
Radio
fix
Show.
stuff.
Oh, yeah. And I find stuff. I totally forgot. Yeah. So, yeah, I find stuff with RIC Home Inspections. Oh, that's right. And you fix stuff. Yes. You've been doing a lot of renovations lately because of the kind of the shift in the housing market. I'm looking forward to this conversation we're going to have on our news desk. Interesting news stories from the NAHB, National Association of Home Builders, and Realtor.com. Some projections, some thoughts on where our market is going.
Right.
And, I've been doing a lot of in my free time, since I'm not doing as many inspections, I've been knocking on a lot of doors, going into real estate offices. And they're kind of feeling it too. They're like, not a lot going on.
Yeah.
Oh, it's, This year, it's a lot of this too. It's December, it's
Yeah.
November, it's an
Uh-huh.
election year.
Uh-huh.
It's interesting how we have all of our excuses.
There's
we like
a lot
to
of
build
them.
up.
There's a lot of them. Yes.
There are. It's like the perfect storm. But I literally have never seen it this slow in the 20 years I've been doing this. So.
Right. Yeah. It seems like every time I start thinking, "Oh God, it's really slow," that's when it takes off again.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what we're just used to, and now we just keep making different excuses for a while. Okay, well maybe it's this. Well, maybe it's this. And I know I was talking to one agent yesterday, and he was talking about, because he's an investor also, and he on the fence about buying one, buying a new house, and he's like, well, I don't know exactly how slow it's gonna be next year. He's a more realistic, he's not gonna make that investment if it's not, he's not gonna try to look past it. He's not gonna say, well, it's definitely gonna turn around, but yeah, he was mentioning, well, we don't know exactly what's gonna happen next year, so I don't know that I want to dive into that one right now, and but it's and I'm interested to hear the news story, because I don't research it a lot. All of mine comes from conversations or if I have something in passing. So yeah, I'm a little anxious to see what these agencies are saying as far as how that's going to pan out.
Well, and what a lot of them are saying is that a lot of homeowners are staying home. They're not looking to buy new homes. They're not looking to make a change. They're looking to actually make the most out of the house that they're in as the economy does its thing. And Realtor.com put out some interesting. I like how they actually positioned it. Is like, if you're going to renovate, these are renovation ripoffs.
Not ripoffs. Oh, my
And of
Lord.
course, it's like, you think ripoff, and you think of somebody taking advantage of you. And I think what they're trying to say is these are the ways you could spend money on a renovation and spend too much.
Yeah, they should call it bad ROI.
There you go. Bad returns on investment is
Yes.
probably the best way to put it. But it doesn't have the it's not the clickbait.
Yeah.
Renovation
Ripoff.
ripoffs.
Let's see what this is.
Yeah, I know, right? So what are some of those things when doing a renovation? The first one on their list is expensive backsplashes. You want to avoid getting real elaborate with backsplashes.
I agree 100%.
Do you? Mm-hmm. When we renovated our house, our kitchen, I brought in a designer to get. I'm glad I did. I brought in a designer to get her input. And one of the things, this was probably back in 2008, and I was like, my wife and I are really into that, like that glass, glass tile.
Fancy.
We think it looks really cool. And she was like, nah, stay away from that.
Don't do it.
Too trendy.
Yeah.
Because people are going to go, oh, I know when they redid that kitchen.
Yeah, it's sort of like the shag carpet and all when we see it now, we make fun of it.
Or-
Avocado green tile in the back.
Or how about the 4x4 tile countertops?
Oh, yes.
That was big in the 90s.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, I know this. Forest green. Forest green
forest
4x4. Yeah.
I remember that.
I had those in my first house.
My parents put that hunter green.
Yes.
They called it hunter green.
Yes, hunter green.
In the 90s, and they did it in our family room. And I remember my older sister came home, and she goes, "Oh, looks like a pool table." It was funny, but yeah, those are things that and brass fixtures.
Yes,
were big in the 90s, things like that.
Yeah,
so
those seem to swing around. The
They
brass,
come-
they
come
come
and
around
go.
every now and then. But there's certain things that don't come back around.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
okay, that was not happening. So, yeah.
So avoid bold changes. Try to stay as backsplashes aren't something you can just rip out and replace.
Right.
So do something that's going to stand the test of time.
Yeah.
And
I'm real big on subway tile.
Yeah.
For backsplashes. If you see a subway tile, it doesn't tell you when that house was built. You could see a subway tile house that was built in 50s or 60s or 70s or 80s through
true.
to today.
That's true.
So anytime anytime someone's undecided about it, I sort of steer them in that direction, because subway tile is inexpensive. I don't like calling anything cheap. But subway tile is not expensive. It's not an expensive material, and that's for backsplashes, showers, surrounds, anything. Subway tile, to me, it is timeless, because you see it from all these different areas, and it's still there. Now, next year, they may never make Subway tile again. I don't know that. But so far, from my experience, Subway tile is timeless, and it looks good, and it will go with anything. If you paint the walls later, you paint the cabinets later, that Subway tile is still going to look good.
It will.
So,
You're right.
I'm all on it. I mean, my house has Subway. It's black Subway tile on the backsplash because I had to get a little bold for some reason. I decided to do that. But, I mean, that's what my backsplash is. It's black Subway tile. And I think it looks great. Now, one day I'll probably hate that I did it black, didn't just go ahead and do white like I recommend to anyone else. But it is what it is. I'll learn my lesson. I'll have to change it, you know?
Yeah. But, yeah, anything that you can do that stands the test of time, go with that. Avoid bold and drastic changes. The next thing on the list here, designer appliances. I like this idea. You can get real fancy with certain types of appliances that do special things or have special features, but, no matter how much money you spend on a fridge, it's going to keep your food cold.
Right.
Right? So they actually, Realtor.com says designer appliances are the biggest waste of money when people are renovating their kitchens, because you can spend a lot of money on just. I see it a lot of times too, where people put. Like I was doing one house a while back, and I was inspecting it, and they had the nicest of, all the high end. I don't know, commercial types of, gas stove, gas oven, all this stuff. It was to the point where I was like, I don't know how to operate this stuff. It's fancy. And I remember asking, like, the real estate agent, what do these people do? I mean, this is expensive stuff. And, they're both surgeons.
Okay.
And all I could think was, they're both surgeons. When do they have time to cook? I mean, are they going to use this stuff?
Yeah.
I would say, honestly, that's when I've helped you inspect. I feel like the more expensive the appliances, the less they actually get used.
Yeah, that's a good
It seems
point.
like the people that actually use their appliances have, like, the ones that literally just do what they needed to do.
Yeah.
And those appliances are the ones that actually get used.
Right. Well, and honestly, would you want a real expensive appliance and it get dirty? I mean, I regret having a gas cooktop, although I love it. I love cooking on gas and all, but I regret it every time I have to clean it.
Yeah.
I mean, everything's all around there. I have to soak all the pieces in bleach and everything else to try to get off the the burnt on smut or whatever. I mean, whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, if I had a $10,000 range, I probably wouldn't want it to get dirty.
Yeah.
I mean,
You know what those people also have, though?
what's that?
What?
Housekeepers.
That's true. That's true. Good point.
Well, the other thing, too, is the way I look at it, too, is the more features something has, it's the more things it could break, more things that
That's
could
true.
just eventually not work at some point. So, be practical when choosing your appliances. Another item on the list, they have trendy hardware and accessories. They may look funny later if you go funky with your.
Yeah.
I mean, the good thing about cabinetry.
Our list says open shelving.
Open
that's why I was
shelving?
looking confused.
Oh,
if you notice, I look confused.
Okay,
I'm
I'm
I was
sorry.
like, do I need to jump ahead or do I
My
need to
list
stop?
is different than yours. Well,
got
at least I have them out of order.
Okay,
So we'll
okay.
get to the trendy hardware later.
Okay.
Open shelving. Things get messy, dusty. So that's a big trendy thing to see. Like people take out cabinets and put in
Yes.
open shelves. But
You gotta keep it
again.
so
We gotta
clean.
be practical.
Where do you put your glasses that you got from Hardee's and the back when they gave you
Your
the
Smurf? Your collection of
with
Charlie
Smurf
Brown,
or
Snoopy
Tweety
glasses?
Bird or whatever, or your tumblers from the football game Friday night.
Yes,
that
yeah.
kind of, where do those go?
Do you really want to see those sitting there?
Tupperware cups.
Oh gosh! And actually, do you want to dust them constantly when
Right.
you don't use them?
Uh-huh.
So yeah. So avoid the the trendy things like open shelving where everybody can see your business. All right, next item on the list. I'll look up there. High tech gadgets. Same thing as we were talking in the kitchens. I'm sorry, we were talking about with the bathrooms. High tech features like heated tiles, towel warmers, things like that. It's the same thing with kitchens. High tech gadgets, they phase out quickly. They get old. I know I wired my kitchen with speakers and stuff like that, only to find out now that they have wireless stuff that does. I was like, man. So, go with. Let's see. Anything that's trendy, try to avoid. They're saying here, go with self-cleaning paints, Corian countertops, sustainable hardwood.
Okay.
Things that'll stand the test of time. It's kind of like what we recommended with backsplashes.
Right.
Is go with the tried and true traditional things. What's the next item on the list here?
You have
Trendy hardware and accessories. They may look funny later.
yeah.
Just
What
like the
is
glass
that?
tile that I mentioned. You can literally walk into a kitchen and go, oh, I know when they renovated this.
Yeah.
And the way I look at it is how many times I've stood in homes plenty of times with home buyers who are like, well, I don't like the colors in here. And I've seen it on TV shows. Those darn TV shows that bother me where somebody walks in and goes, I don't like this house. I don't like the color of the living room. Well, you can paint it.
Yeah, paint it.
If that's going to deter a home buyer,
Yes.
some of your fixtures that you might put in that might steer someone away, you might want to avoid. The thing about hardware and accessories is that you can change them out, but I don't know. Last thing on the list here, relocating plumbing and electrical systems. You want to avoid that at all costs. Well, it's just like we were talking with the bathrooms. You would think that moving a toilet maybe 6 inches or a foot over is not a big deal.
It is.
Yeah. It's the same thing with the kitchen. If you're looking at moving a sink or taking the dishwasher and putting it over there, and when you take fixtures like that, that can get expensive.
Yes.
And the reason why partially is because not only is it hard to move the sink and the drain, but think about the water supply lines.
Yeah.
And the way you got to route the plumbing now.
Yep.
Or if you're moving a dishwasher or an oven, think about what are we going to have to do with the electrical.
Yep. What I always tell people, this is something that people absolutely do not understand. I think this is going to be a good point. Moving the stuff usually isn't the expensive part. Putting everything back together is the expensive part, because now you just move that sink to this location, so now there has to be a cabinet over here that has to match the rest of the cabinets, and then it ends up, a lot of times, it ends up replacing all the cabinets because you can't match the cabinet that you just added.
Moved.
And it's and I think a lot of people don't grasp that. It's the same thing with repairs. Fixing a leaking water line, okay, that part is nothing. I mean, there's some of them that are more challenging. But let's say you have a leaking mixing valve, shower mixing valve, and it's outdated and you can't do it. Repairing it's not the biggest expense. It's putting everything back together, especially if one side, say, an exterior wall on a brick house and the other side is a tile shower.
Okay.
Now you can't access that. There's no way to access it. So no matter what you do, you have to tear something apart and put it back together.
Oh, man.
But that's the expense on a lot of these things, like relocating the plumbing and electrical. Relocating, okay, yeah, I can take that receptacle and move it over there, move it a couple feet for you. But now you have to fix whatever that receptacle is in. What if it was in a cabinet? What if it was in a tile wall? What if it was in...
You got to fix the tile.
You got to... And then a lot of times, if it's a tile you can't get anymore, now it leads to replacing
the
all
whole,
of it.
yeah.
And it's a lot of, and that's really something you have to think about when you start talking about moving things, because the expense there is expense in moving it, but a lot of times putting it back together ends up being a larger expense than the moving of it in the first place.
Very interesting. So all those things worthy of keeping in mind when renovating your kitchen. Avoid these renovation ripoffs from Realtor.com. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the market, and we've got an update on the Goonies house. Last week, we were talking about how it was on the market. Well, it's sold.
Okay.
But there's some controversy brewing with it. We'll learn about that when we come back on the Home Pros Radio Show.
Thanks for watching the Home Pros Radio Show. You know, Shane and I would love to know what you think of the show, so we'd like to invite you to leave us a review.
At the Home Pros Radio Show, it's our goal to keep homeowners entertained, inspired, and informed. So let us know how we're doing.
Your review helps us ensure that we're including the content you want to hear and that we're reaching out to more homeowners just like you.
So click on that review button and tell us what you think.
Your relationship with your home is an emotional one. Your home provides a sense of pride for you and your family. Through ongoing training, past experience, and current technology, RIC Home Inspections can provide you with the most reliable and accurate information available so you can enjoy the rewards of your homeownership. Call RIC Home Inspections at 235-5505 or visit us online at richomeinspections.com. That's 235-5505. RIC Home Inspections. Love where you live.
The Home Pros Radio Show is brought to you in part by Screen Mobile of the Piedmont. Established in 1982, Screen Mobile National has been around that long, and they're the nation's largest screen installation and repair company. They offer many different options for windows, screens, whether it's a corporate location or even a home residential location. They can bring their mobile units out to you and repair your screens, replace them, or even create a whole outdoor environment that you can use to keep the bugs out with their screens.
I've always been impressed with the tent one, the one
Yeah.
that keeps your siding from melting or your neighbor's siding from melting.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's saying tint with an I to help cool things down. Yeah, for those of you who are not in the
Not from
South.
South Carolina.
Exactly. And that'll protect, some of your outdoor building products like your siding from melting. That's a good point. I never
It's
even
not
thought
always a
about that.
grill. It can be a window.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So give Screen Mobile a call. There's a Screen Mobile in your area. You can visit them online at screenmobile.com. If you're in the upstate of South Carolina, call Screen Mobile of the Piedmont, 864-641-7476.
And we're back on the Home Pros Radio Show. I'm Tommy Donovan with RIC Home Inspections.
And I'm Shane Hips with Closing Contractor.
And it's time to visit our news desk. All right, we have a couple of updates.
I think of Spider-Man every time we go to this segment.
You think of that? What?
Of Spider-Man, I get when they're in the. You know what? That is exactly
News from
what
the Daily Bugle.
That's what I visualize every time is Spider-Man.
That's funny.
And what I actually, and I don't know the actor's name or anything, but the guy with the mustache, the guy that was over the.
Yeah, J. Jonah Jameson.
Whoever.
Get in here, Parker!
That's who I see every time we go to the segment.
That's funny.
So,
well, good. That's the whole idea of between the theater of the mind, what you do with podcasting and radio, is you want to create that image of a busy newsroom. All right, so what we have here is news from the National Association of Home Builders. They say the big jump in single-family home building activity that occurred. Remember we were noticing that during the whole COVID deal?
Oh, yeah.
During the COVID pandemic, where that was the time we were like, hey, inventory's low. It's a seller's market, that's that, and the other. Well, all the builders jumped in and started contributing. Mm-hmm. Well, all of that building has now shown a marked decline over the past 12 months, according to the NAHB. This, according to the National Association of Home Builders and the Home Building Geography Index, the HBGI. All these acronyms. HBGI, the Home Building Geography Index.
Okay.
It's a quarterly measurement of building conditions across the country and uses county-level information about single and multifamily permits to gauge housing construction growth in various urban and rural geographies. Mm-hmm. So, National Association of Home Builder Chairman Jerry Conter, he's a home builder in Savannah, Georgia, says that the slowdown is across the board. So they're looking at this county data, and they're noticing throughout the country it's consistent.
Right.
He says, quote, home building activity has slowed in nearly all regions as high mortgage rates, elevated inflation. I feel like doing this. As high mortgage rates,
elevated inflation,
stubbornly high construction costs act as a drag on consumer demand on housing affordability. So it's like we were talking earlier about the perfect storm. Mm-hmm. There you go. National Association of Home Builders chief economist Robert Dietz says this: While the bulk of single-family construction continued to occur in the South and lower density markets where we are, where job conditions are more favorable and housing costs are lower, the data clearly shows these areas are acting as a leading indicator for the entire housing market throughout the country. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
He says they're registering the largest production declines, even as other regions are also displaying weaknesses as the national housing market has fallen into a recession. There's the big R word that everyone's afraid to say these days, due to rising mortgage rates and a slowing economy. So it looks like they're basically saying, we're in a recession as far as the real estate industry.
Well, all this looked very similar to 2007 to me the whole time anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it looked very similar to a lot of different people. As far as on the home builder stuff.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there was all kind. Well, honestly, that's about the time I got into building. It was, I think, 2003, 2004. But, it was before, just right up to it. And everyone was getting into it because it's so hot, so hot, so hot. And, I mean, a little while back, I mean, every time I turned around, I saw a new builder, a new person building, whatever, people getting into it that probably never done it before or it worked around it before. So, yeah, I mean, it looks very similar. I mean, hopefully there's definitely some differences, but I see it. It's like, it's funny how you see it and it's like, it looks just like you see all the signs, the exact same signs coming up. And it's,
which is a good segue into the next story. I'm glad you mentioned that because the Realtor.com put this story out. It says foreclosures are continuing to surge, but they aren't a red flag for the housing market quite yet.
Okay.
So this is kind of, I guess we're seeing the glass half full in this article.
Okay.
From Realtor.com, because that's the question is, all right, are we looking at a recession repeat?
Right.
Or foreclosure issue like we had previously. But there are certain factors that are coming into play with this. So in November, here are the stats: 30,600 properties across the nation received some sort of foreclosure filing, such as a notice of default because a homeowner is behind in the mortgage payments, or an auction scheduled, according to a recent report from the real estate data from Atom. That was up 57% compared with a year ago. There were 3,700 completed foreclosures during the month, up 64% versus last year. So what they're saying is while big spikes might seem jarring, it's not a sign of another foreclosure crisis like we had back in the late 2000s.
Right.
During the COVID-19 pandemic, there were foreclosure moratoriums put in place for those with government-backed mortgages for nearly 2 years. So many lenders extended these protections to other borrowers as well to protect homeowners who lost jobs or other income during the pandemic. The result is a higher number of foreclosure filings now because proceedings are going forward again. Does that make sense? So there were delays.
Right.
There were, during the pandemic, people were, I guess, I wouldn't call it forgiveness, but they were kind of putting it off.
Yeah.
But what's happening is not much has changed, so those who are going to foreclose are now doing it.
Right.
And you're seeing it in higher numbers. Foreclosures are still lower than in the pre-pandemic period. So, let's see. Rick Sharga, Atom, Attom. I don't know what that is. I should have looked that up. He's an executive vice president of market research who did this research. Says it will take until the middle to late 2023 for foreclosure activity to reach pre-pandemic levels, I guess to normalize. Even then, it shouldn't represent a concern for the overall housing market. A big relief for anyone who remembers the foreclosure situation from back in the late 2000s.
Oh, yeah.
That was a mess.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, man. Yeah, I saw some nasty houses back there.
Yeah. I mean, I ended up benefiting from it after the fact. I mean, just because that's when renovation loans got very popular.
Yeah.
Different kinds of renovation loans where people were buying houses, but they didn't have the amount of money it needed to repair it because the people that were being foreclosed on ripped everything out of the house, and the bank couldn't sell it without. They couldn't get an FHA loan because it was missing half the light fixtures.
Yeah.
So that's when renovation loans really had a big surge, because you could borrow the money to buy the house and to fix it all in the same loan before it's done. So, but yeah, I sort of see that happening. Not maybe not as bad as it did previously, but I see those getting popular again.
Yeah.
With the banks and all, I can definitely see some renovation products picking up.
Yeah.
Whether it be 203Ks or there's several different ones. I always say 203K just because that's the one that I've learned the process on. But yeah, there's so many different ones.
Yeah. I saw houses. I mean, one of the ones that I remember most is somebody had moved out. I mean, you always see people take light fixtures and things like that. Mm-hmm. And I could see that. I mean, it's like, well, I put that in. It wasn't the builder.
Right.
They should have replaced it, but still. But there's one house where they took the toilets, they took the cabinets, they took the sinks, they took everything.
I remember seeing a mixing valve missing out of the house. It's like I wouldn't have even taken the shower apart to take the mixing valve. I mean, that's work to have to get back to that and take it out. But I saw some with that missing. It's like, and one of the funniest ones I saw silhouettes all over the house in like 3 or 4 different places. It was like silhouettes of people. I was like, what is that? And then I walked up and got closer to it. It's where somebody had been target practicing with a knife. Like throwing a knife. And there was holes all in that.
And the drywall around?
In the drywall. There's I guess they painted the silhouette or whatever on the wall. It was in one of the upstairs bedrooms. It was in like the dining room right off the foyer, like in the bottom, and then one other room. But they had painted like silhouettes of people on the wall. And someone had sat there, practiced their knife throwing skills, and put holes all in that.
That is so funny.
They were pretty good. Thrower. They kept it in there because I didn't see the marks all outside everywhere else. So
and this was a foreclosure.
It was a foreclosure. Yep. They didn't really care too much anymore. They probably, with the amount of holes in the wall, they probably didn't care before it went into foreclosure because
I guess the business at the county fairs were
I don't know.
The circus was not doing well that year.
I guess not.
They had to foreclose on their house.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to mess with whoever that was though, because they had pretty good aim.
Yeah, I know, right? Wow. Mm-hmm. Well, moving on to our final story this week. Here's a follow-up from last week. The Goonies house went on the market. It's a really nice-looking house.
Yeah.
Well, after less than a week, it was apparently priced just right because it only took a week for it to sell.
They left money on the table. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So it is sold. Jordan Miller of John L. Scott Real Estate said the buyers want to remain anonymous until the deal is closed. So they're not announcing who it was. The home was listed for $1.65 million. They're not saying how much it was bought for. They also bought the house next door, which was listed. They didn't mention this last week, but the house next door is being purchased for $550,000.
Okay,
because I guess it was in some of the scenes, some of the shots, which goes to tell me that they have an intention of turning it into. Remember, I mentioned the Christmas Story house, where
right?
They had, we covered it because it's back on the market.
Right.
So they had the Christmas Story house, and then the house next door, and then the house across the street. It was all a part of the whole.
They got the whole community.
The museum.
Yeah.
And that's probably what they're going to do with the Goonies house. But they said the buyers look forward to becoming a part of the community, preserving and protecting the home as an iconic landmark. However, the folks in Astoria, Oregon, are throwing up some red flags. The city council just made it clear that any potential attempts to commercialize the Goonies house is not going to be tolerated.
Oh, they shutting that down before it happens.
I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
That sucks. So, Jordan Miller, who attended, he's the real estate agent, attended the city council. They had a city council meeting with Michael Eakin, who said he's under contract to buy the home next door. He said he was also representing the buyer of the Goonies house, who wishes to remain anonymous. I mentioned that already. The city council pointed out that commercialization cannot take place in a residential neighborhood. He considered the house as a tourist draw that helps bring revenue to the city. They're basically saying, hey, we're going to help
bring people here to make the city money.
And then there are folks from the city who then stood up, who live in the neighborhood, who were like, we don't need your help.
Right.
You know,
sounds like Yellowstone.
We find it. Yeah, there you go.
You watch Yellowstone?
No,
you need to watch it. The same thing right here going on.
We watched some of it. I watched an episode or two.
Yeah.
And
except there's a lot more money involved in the Yellowstone transaction than this one. But yes, sounds like Yellowstone to me.
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that we have going on. So, so it's causing some controversy. We'll see how that plays out. But I don't know. I mean, we already heard about all the traffic that's happening anyway.
Right.
As well.
Right.
I don't know.
They should be used to it by now.
Yeah, I would think so.
I guess they just want them to just put somebody to live in it and still let all the people harass whoever lives in it.
Yeah. I guess that's what they expect. But I don't know. I think it'd be cool to do something cool. I mean, they didn't have a problem at least it didn't seem like the neighborhood had an issue with the Christmas Story house in Cleveland.
Right.
When we were there.
Yeah. Who knows?
What?
It was a different type of neighborhood.
It was a different type of neighborhood. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see this. I mean, sort of like, well, one thing I think of is at the beginning of the summer, I went up to Boston.
Yeah.
And the place I stayed was like Cape Cod before Cape Cod became Cape Cod. Mm-hmm. And, obviously those people don't want, like there was rules, no Airbnbs and whatnot. Now, we did stay in an Airbnb because somebody, people can somehow get around the system sometimes or whatever. And I'm not going to say where I was because I don't want anybody to go up there and buy everything before I get a chance to get me something up there. But yeah, I mean, it was a I mean, I see how that could be because you want your community to still be what it is. I mean, it was but yeah, the place I was at, I mean, it was awesome. And there was no tourists. I was like the only tourist there, so it was great. And everybody liked me because I was the only tourist. But if there was 20 tourists, they wouldn't like me. It wouldn't be fun anymore.
Yeah.
So I could see how this would I can't say everybody liked me. I mean, I'm sure some people probably don't like me. Yeah. Sounds sort of like, hey, what's not to like? But I didn't mean
we joke about that when we're up at our lake house.
Yeah.
Because we're like, oh, tourists. They'll be gone. But that's just like anything. When you live in when you live in a vacation area, I mean,
yeah,
that part of or that Astoria, was it Oregon?
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, when you're living on the coast like that, you should expect a certain amount of tourism.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. But, that wraps up our news update for this week. All right. So, what did we learn today?
Gentlemen,
we learned a lot today.
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
We're having the Joker there. He stopped talking. What did we learn? We learned a lot about the market, what the real estate market may have in store. It's going to be interesting. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a lot like 2008, but a lot like not like 2008, I guess.
I guess we'll see.
We'll see what happens. Yes. We'll keep you posted. Renovating your kitchens. Avoid renovation ripoffs like designer appliances. Whoops.
I think that was the
wrong button. Yeah, there we go. Avoid moving large fixtures. What do you say about that, Salt and Pepper? All right. If we want to stick with tradition, avoid things that are going to be bold choices like glass tile or, what? Chevrons? Oh, chevron tile. Things like that are hard to replace. There we go.
I definitely think you need to change the sound for something different than the ding. Go, oh yeah, or
right.
Hey, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Good. Why not?
What else we have? What did we learn today? We learned we had a nice little in our photo from the field. We learned how a galvanized drain can fill up. We saw a cross section of that. Yeah, and then we also We learned about crawl space vents. We talked about, hey, if you're going to close them, it's okay to do it in the winter. Just please remember, for the sake of chain, pest control operators, and home inspectors everywhere, open them up in the summer. All right. And the last thing we have here, what do I have? I can't read my own handwriting. Be careful putting popcorn kernels in your garbage disposal.
Yes.
That can make a lot of noise.
Makes a lot of noise.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us for this week's Home Pros Radio Show. If you want to reach out to us, have any questions, feel free to reach out. ask@homeprosradio.com is where you can get us online. You can also check us out on social media at Home Pros Radio is where you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, all those places. And let's keep in touch. We'll catch you next week on the Home Pros Radio Show.
Thank you for listening to the Home Pros Radio Show. If you have a question for the Home Pros, visit us online at homeprosradio.com, where you can also catch our podcast episodes and learn more about the topics and guests we bring to you each week. The Home Pros Radio Show is made possible by Prime Lending, RIC Home Inspections, Closing Contractor, Radon Recon, and Carolina Heating Service. If you are a trusted service provider in our area and would like to contribute to the show, send us a message through our Contact Us page at homeprosradio.com. Once again, thanks for listening to the Home Pros Radio Show.